Hello, families. Did you know it's officially summer? And I'm excited about that. If we haven't met, my name is Dave.
And I'm Christy. Happy summer and happy Father's Day to many of you. We are glad to be with you here today.
Thanks, Christy. Do any of you guys remember the question that we've been asking every week? That's right. We have been asking the question, what is God like? You know, one way that we can learn about what is God is like is to read about him in the Bible. So let's review what we've already learned about God from the book of Daniel. First, we saw King Nebuchadnezzar throw 3 friends into the fiery furnace. But God delivered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the furnace. Next, we saw how God humbled King Nebuchadnezzar to show that God is in control and that no one, not even a king, is above God. And then Nebuchadnezzar's son, Belshazzar, became the king. And he is actually the king when today's story takes place. And then we see Darius overthrow Belshazzar. And Darius was the king that threw Daniel into the lion's den. And last week we saw how God rescued Daniel out of the lion's den. Guys, one thing that all of these stories have in common and that we can see is that God is trustworthy. He is dependable and he is always with us. Let's say it together. What is God like? God is trustworthy.
Thanks, Dave, for reminding us that the Bible tells us what God is like. The Bible is a book of lots of little stories that tell one big story about who God is. And today, we're going to learn another story about Daniel. Daniel had been with King Nebuchadnezzar, but now a long time had passed, and there was a new king in Babylon. And this is another story of how Daniel saw that God has the power to save. Let's listen.
In the first year that Belshazzar was king, Daniel had a dream. And in the dream, Daniel saw a big windstorm on the sea. 4 big creatures came up from the sea, each different from the others. Daniel had never seen any animals like these before. The first creature was like a lion, but it had wings like an eagle. The second creature was like a bear. It had 3 ribs in its mouth. The third creature was like a leopard, but it had 4 wings on its back, and it had 4 heads. The fourth creature was strong and scary. It had large teeth made of iron and destroyed everything in its path. This fourth creature had 10 horns. Then Daniel saw a place in heaven with thrones. God sat down on the throne to judge the creatures. His hair and clothing were white like snow, and his throne was like fire. God took away the creatures' power. God allowed the first 3 creatures to live for a little while, but the creature with the horns was killed. Suddenly, the Son of Man came, and God gave him power to rule over everything. He was the king, and the people of every nation and language served him. His kingdom would last forever, and it would never be destroyed. Daniel was frightened by his dream. God gave Daniel the ability to understand what the dreams meant. The 4 creatures were 4 kings who ruled the earth. Their rule would not last forever. God would give his people the kingdom forever and ever. Daniel did not tell anyone about his dream. He wrote down everything that he saw.
Wow! What a dream Daniel had! It left him terrified and confused, the Bible says. I remember one time when I was lost and I didn't know my way, and I got very scared. And at that moment I remembered that God was with me and that he could help me find my way. The Bible says when Daniel heard this dream and he was confused, he asked God to help him understand what the dream meant. And God used that dream to remind Daniel that Jesus is the King of all kings. And though Daniel had seen lots of rulers come and go, and Babylon had changed kings, Jesus is coming back to make his kingdom, and it will be the perfect kingdom, and it will last forever. Because we know, and the Bible tells us, that Jesus is the King of all kings, and he will be the king forever, and he's the perfect king.